Excellent. Great to see you all, familiar faces and new ones. My name is Rodrigo Souza. I'm the co-chair of the Innovation SIG. We have Kathleen Horvat, our secretary, actually our former chair here, Mark Turner as well. Sarah Gordon might join us in a few minutes. She's just finishing a meeting. She is also sharing the Innovation SIG chair with me. It's a pleasure to have you all. This year, we are running a project on sustainability and responsibility toolkit, or sustainability toolkit, responsibility toolkit, as you want. And the idea is that today we'll have an open mic section. And just to make this interaction more fluid, it would be good to know who you are and where you're coming from. So perhaps I will go following the list of attendees, and you can just quickly introduce where you're calling from, what you're doing, which company you're working for, and what your main interest in risk management and in the Innovation SIG. So what do you expect for this meeting? So perhaps, Mark, would you like to start? And then we go to Martina.
Just put me straight on the spot. Thanks, Rodrigo.
Your usual to the dynamic. So.
Well, I can officially say that from today I'm a student again. So I'm now, so I'm studying for masters at Glasgow Caledonian University. So doing my MSc in risk. So that all kicks off officially tomorrow. But all my registration and everything went through today, so that's great. But for my day job, I work in designing software for risk management. I'm a consultant into a couple of companies for that. I'm also a director of the IRM. So I've been almost, I can't believe it's almost a year now since I got elected. So that's pretty amazing, actually. And I've been involved with the SIG since 2007. So gives you some idea as how long this SIG's been running for. Okay, thanks.
What were some of the things like back in if you look at it then and now, like how has risk changed since then? Interesting.
Obviously the software has come a long way. The big debates when I first got into it was talking about big data. So big data was the big sort of way forward. My first interaction with the Innovation SIG was giving a presentation at a big data conference, which Clive Thompson had organised. And then it's moved. Then it's gone very much from a technological perspective through to a personal perspective. And about risk management and the risk management skills and the capabilities that individuals have got. And then there's always been that sort of to and fro between the people and the technology and the process as well. So we've had some really good debates and some really great output over the last, 13, 14 years since I've been involved with it. Fantastic involvement. And of course, meeting the new people has always just been a wonderful thing for me. So it's great to see so many new faces on here as well.
That's great, Mark, and always learning, isn't it? So I'm impressed how you're still avid to learn. That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Martina, would you like to introduce yourself, and then we go to David Waller?
Hi, I'm Martina Smith, and I'm currently down in Hampshire, and I'm between jobs at the moment. So I have my risk management exams through the Institute of Risk Management, the International Diploma in Risk Management, and also my master's degree in risk, crisis and resilient management through Portsmouth University. So I'm currently looking for a job.
Okay, that's excellent, Martina. Thank you very much. David Waller, where are you calling from? What you're doing? And then we go to Russell Hopperstone. I'm sure that I did it wrong, but.
So I'm calling in from Cambridge, England.
Yeah.
I work for Irm, which is we design semiconductors, and we're probably the biggest company nobody's ever heard of. And I work. We have a very small risk management team, which is me and my boss, and she's the head of audit as well. I kind of moved into that role from an internal audit role, and I've been an internal auditor for 18 years, I think, before I stepped into this role. And yeah, I passed my IRM exams last December, and kind of I think this is about the third SIG that I've attended, and currently we're kind of looking at leveraging the information that our various kind of governance forums receive, and how we can take that, rather than reinvent the wheel and kind of create more key risk indicators, how we can use the stuff the business already produces to kind of illustrate risk for our risk review committee.
Isn't it the challenge, like always use the data that you already have and be efficient with the metrics? Thank you, David. And are you discussing a lot about sustainability recently?
Sorry,
are you discussing a lot about sustainability in your industry, semiconductors? I think so.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, it is a topic that kind of comes up quite a lot. We obviously kind of are doing, in fact, I kind of received an email today about ESG reporting that people are putting together. But we're very, very office based. We don't fabricate. So we're not what's called a foundry, which is where the chips actually get produced. We design up to the point where what's called tape out, where they actually lay out the chip and then manufacture it. And so we're effectively R&D for the entire industry. So we're just, it's very, very office based. And a lot of, effectively it's all software design. So all of the chip designs are done in software.
Very, very interesting. I would love to hear more about it. Moving on to Russell, and then we go to Laurie. So Russell, where do I lean in and what you're doing at the moment?
Good evening, everybody. I'm dialing in from Kent in the UK. So my name is Russell Heppelston. I work for the UK National Audit Office. Most people know us as the watchdog of government. So we're the independent auditors of government. We also do about 60 to 65 value for money studies and investigations over what government spends its money on. I'm a risk manager for a relatively newly created strategic objective for the National Audit Office, which is around sharing knowledge and insight. So as part of that hub, it's a finance and risk management hub, I lead on our risk maturity work across government, but also our resilience work stream. So part of the role of the hub is to influence and share what the NAO reports. So one of the challenges for the NAO is to make our insights and learning more accessible across government. So it's very much kind of proactive role. So in addition to trying to share good practice and drive improvement in risk management and resilience, we also support delivery teams as basically a risk centre of excellence. So it enables me to get involved in operational risk management across government. So in terms of background, I've got 17 years working in public sector. 16 of those now were in local government. I started life as an internal auditor as well. Worked for multiple shared services within internal audit, risk and governance, and then qualified as a risk manager 5-6 years ago through the IRM, and then kind of moved into the risk management space. Specifically, part of the reason of being part of these groups is really just to identify and absorb as much kind of leading practice as I can, in addition to kind of sharing knowledge and hopefully contributing to kind of the development of the profession. So it's great to meet everybody.
That's excellent. I think that we have a lot of people coming from our internal auditing background. So yeah, we can talk more about it. Moving on to Laurie, and then we can go to Neil. So Laurie, would you like to introduce yourself? Where are you dialing from?
Hi everyone, welcome. Yes, my name's Laurie Bowman. I'm calling from Brisbane in Australia, and very interested to join this group. I've been involved in, I guess I started off in project planning, which naturally has quite a bit of overlap with risk, and I guess the last 10 to 15 years of my career have been more focused on risk management specifically. I'm a consultant and a trainer. So in consulting, I do helping with primarily portfolio and project frameworks. I get involved in stage gate assurance reviews, and on the training side, I'm involved primarily in training early career engineers in taking an all hazards approach to risk management and project planning, which I really enjoy. I'm also doing a PhD at the moment on risk-based decision making to invest in projects. So look forward to learning from you all and collaborating.
That's excellent, Laura. We might be hearing more from you in a minute, I believe. So yeah, hold on. We have Neil. Can you hear, Neil? Would you like to introduce yourself, and then we can go to Trevor? I'm not sure.
Oh, Neil, I think Neil said he was just listening in on this one. So
okay, that's fine. So we can move on to Trevor. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us where you're dialing from?
Yeah.
What you're doing?
Hi there, everyone. Oh, there you go. It does work.
Yeah. Good to see you.
Hi. So apologies about this. I've got a silly Dell machine that decides to have the camera at the bottom of the screen. I've no it's ridiculous.
We're talking about design of computer-like, so we might have an expert here to help.
I work for Risk Decisions, so we're actually a risk management software provider. We develop and produce our predict risk management and risk analysis software. So I'm here to see how people want to innovate, to see if we begin to do that within our predict software and the risk management services that we provide.
Excellent.
I think I mentioned at the start, I've been to a number of SIGs, mostly the infrastructure one, because that's one of our key areas, along with defence is another major area that we work in. But my colleague Val Jonas is on the leadership SIG, the recently formed one that's just kicked off for major projects. I can't quite remember the title. The title's about 15 sentences long for the SIG. She's one of the people on the committee of that one.
Yeah, that's excellent. I can see a lot of people with common interests. You just remind me about our colleague Mike Turner that had worked in defense, and is working with software as well. So
I do know Mark, don't worry.
That's the purpose of the SIG, actually, that we can share ideas, that we can grow together. And just to finish the introduction, let's hear more about Kathleen. And yeah, I will give a brief about myself, and hopefully Sarah will be joining us soon.
Yeah. So my name is Kathleen Horvat, and I have an international diploma from the IRM, which was about 2 years ago now. And I've been working in enterprise risk management for the last about 7 years. And I work in the publishing industry now, and on risk, manager of governance, risk and compliance. And I spent a long time in the retail industry, and I'm seeing even industries that are so different from each other, how similar some of the issues they grapple with. You know, transformation to digital is one risk for my organization, and just changes in business models. So just working with management and getting through that. Yeah,
that's excellent, Kathleen. And everything that happens here actually is driven behind the scenes by Kathleen. So thank you very much, Kathleen, for your help.
I'm not sure about that. More like but
it is, you know that it is. So it's a pleasure to have you all. My name is Rodrigo Souza. I'm the co-chair of the Innovation SIG. I'm also a senior lecturer at Roehampton Business School. I have started my career in internal auditing, went to consultancy and oil and gas industry before landing into the PhD and getting into academia. And nowadays, I don't know if I stay here, if I should leave. I have been sharing ideas with many professional bodies in regard to organizational resilience. You might have seen the white paper on the IRM website. I have also led some research recently with SIG, trying to understand metrics for resilience before, during, after crisis. And I might be conducting future research on how to balance resilience and efficiency. if it's possible. So yeah, let's see what will happen in that area. Today, before we finish, we just had new joiner join us. Swapnil, would you like to share with us where you dialing in from and what you do in the area of risk management? If your mic is working, perfect. Yeah.
I'm from India. I'm audible?
Okay, yeah, I can hear.
Yeah, I'm from India. I'm working in Yes Bank under risk management team. So recently I have completed level 1 from the IRM, and then I got the opportunity for this program as well, for the workshop. So I just joined to know about more in detail about the risk management and everything.
Okay, that's excellent. Great to have you with us. And we just had Joe Doville join us as well. So Joe, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us where you're dialing from?
Not on mute.
Oh, not on mute. Okay, I'm not sure if Joe is available. Okay, that's fine. If you are available at any point, just let us know or share your details on the chat box. So as I have mentioned, it's great to have you with us. Over the past 3 meetings or so, actually the whole year, if you think about it, we have been discussing the idea of sustainability toolkits. So what kind of information that we need to have and how can we develop these metrics that are required to manage risk and sustainability. And we just had Sarah join us, so that's great. If you haven't seen the minutes yet, please do. We're just made the minutes available in the IRM website, and it would be great to see if you have any comments. So does anyone have any comments in regard to the previous minutes? Would like to change something, comment on something? Didn't see it, didn't check. Okay, that's totally fine. So go on, Kathleen.
One other thing, the meeting is being recorded. So if anybody, it has been recorded since the beginning. If anybody doesn't like that, please say so now. No worries.
Okay. So since we had Sarah join us, Sarah, would you like to introduce yourself and yeah, we can continue.
Yeah, sure. Hello, everybody. My sincere apologies for being late today. I am your co-chair for the Institute of Risk Management Innovation Special Interest Group. It always surprises me when I manage to actually say all of that without stumbling. And together with the fantastic Rodrigo and Kathleen, run these sessions for all of yourselves. Just by way of background, I'm originally a geologist, so I grew up in the mining sector, but over the last 8-9 years or so have been working as a consultant with lots and lots of different organizations doing both risk management but also sustainability. So you can see there is a little bit of biasing in terms of the kind of conversations we've been having over the last few months, because I unashamedly find them really interesting. So thanks, Rodrigo.
It's a pleasure. So today we'll be continuing our trilogy open mic section on sustainability toolkits, and it will be great to hear from some of the participants. Actually, I have invited Laurie Bowman that will share with us some of the tools that he's using on his practice. And if anyone else would like to chip in some ideas or tools that would be outstanding. We might have Sarah sharing some tools as well. We have a few other participants that might be joining us a little bit late. It seems that many people had meetings finishing today, so we might have a few other people join us in a few minutes. The idea is that in 3 minutes or so, each of the participants can make a pitch in regard to their tool, and then we have another 3 minutes or so to raise questions and discuss how applicable or not that would be to our practice and how we can help each other. And you can share contacts and you can continue the conversation as we move on to each participant and as we finish the meeting. So Laura, would you like to share some slides or just talk about your tool, and yeah, we can continue with Sarah. So
yeah, sure. Happy to. So I've prepared a few slides about my research topic. So not so much about a tool, but I can sort of wing it a little bit, and I can talk about some of the tools that I have that might be quite related to the research I'm doing, if that's okay.
Excellent. And if anyone would like to follow Laurie and Sarah, please just text me on the chat box, and I will add you to the list of participants as well. So, Laurie, what would you like to share with us?
Let me see. I'm just looking. Oh, there we go. Share screen. Okay, there we go. So I'm just sharing a PowerPoint slide. Okay, all good.
All good.
Okay, so what I'm sharing with you is the nature of my research, but as suggested, I'll touch on a few opportunities that I see in some of the tools that I have developed as we move along. So the context of the research is, I guess the topic for starters is looking at how we can improve risk-based decision making for investments in projects in the mining industry. So though it is specific to the mining industry, the principles apply to all industries. The mining industry has just been selected because of some of the unique challenges and the rare opportunity that the mining industry offers the rest of society as the world moves away from fossil fuels and becomes more dependent on some of the critical minerals for net zero transition. So the context of the research is really sort of related to a report recently by CSIRO, which is the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation, and they've identified 7 megatrends, and these sort of megatrends have been described by a number of other organisations as well. So the adaptation to climate change, the shift towards looking after the emissions and biodiversity, the escalating health imperative, particularly considering sustainability globally, some of the geopolitical shifts and risks, the drive towards digital, the increasing autonomy and the increasing rise of artificial intelligence, and lastly, unlocking the human dimension. So elevating the importance of diversity, equity, and transparency in decision-making, so largely around ethics. So all of these emerging risks or emerging themes increase the complexity and make risk-based decision-making far more complex than it used to be. Once upon a time, decision-making for projects largely used to be driven around simply financial or economic outcomes. These days, it's a far more balanced approach where we need to consider a variety of things and consider both long-term as well as short-term impacts. So according to Charles Darwin and his Origin of the Species, it's not the most intellectual of the species that survives, it's not the strongest that survives, but the species that survives is the one that's best able to adapt and adjust to the changing environment in which it finds itself. And all of this is very relevant to my research because projects are the vehicles for change. So if we're not undertaking projects, we really are just maintaining the status quo. So suddenly, in light of the sustainability challenge, the net zero transition, executing projects effectively or deciding which projects to execute and executing them effectively is really a key ingredient to the human species really being able to adapt to change more effectively. So just sharing this slide with you. I have a question for you. Which square do you think is darker, square A or square B?
E seems lighter, so A is darker.
B is darker.
No, it's lighter.
Yeah, I've seen this before. Apparently they're both the same color, but it's because of the other colors around them.
Yeah, that's right. And I've seen this 1,000 times and I've showed the slide and I still think that square A is darker. There's just nothing I can do to unprogram whatever that algorithm is that's telling me that square A is darker. But it's interesting that our minds play some trick on us. They see that B is in the shadow and do some sort of adjustment and tell us with great confidence that square A is darker when in fact it's not. And this is just one example of, you know, the sort of errors, the systematic errors that we can make when we're making decisions. And of course, Daniel Kahneman, the famous psychologist, won a Nobel Prize for his prospect theory, which really unpacked in great detail just a few of the fundamental biases and systematic errors that we make. And like his book, Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow, really outlines this quite nicely. But he sort of organises or has a model that we use two systems for making decisions. System one is our automatic, intuitive response that we don't really have much control over, like when a lion or a snake suddenly appears in front of us, we panic, our heart races and things like that. We don't have much control over that, as well as our slow, rational decision making, which he regards as system two. And he's found that system one has biases inherent within it. But even when we look at system two, when we're slow and calculating, we still tend to make systematic errors, particularly in decision making for large, complex decisions that involve probability and statistics, and decisions that tend to be much larger and more complex than the sorts of decisions that we've made through evolution. And these are exactly the sorts of decisions that we make on large, complex projects. We haven't evolved performing large, complex projects throughout history. This is just something that we've started doing in recent times. So some of the ways that he describes error, he sort of breaks it out into noise and bias. So this first example being an example of accurate decision making, the second one being an example of noisy, where there's random error. Bias is more when you're systematically moving in one direction and making an error in a systematic way. So you can see this one here, versus noisy and biased, which is shown by this last one. And data on project history to date shows that we are both noisy and biased, particularly when projects become complex. And this is a summary from research that's been done by Professor Bent Flivbier on mega projects. So very well known, his research around the world showing systematic, on average, cost overruns for large projects, and the size of projects just being one attribute that is closely correlated with complexity. This is good to be mindful of because, as per the introduction, projects are becoming far more complex. So this is the trend. We can see systematic overruns and errors, and that was from the past where primarily we've only been thinking about financial impacts. Moving forward, we need to think of far more than that. So this is a map or a conceptual map that I've developed that really describes or attempts to describe the way that an enterprise or an organisation deals with risk, considering the external sorts of risk using the PESTEL framework, internal sources of risk being processes, people and assets, and then different organisational mechanisms for dealing with risk. So acquisitions and disposals, for example, project portfolios, which may have projects within them, and then have interfaces and exchanges of risk between operations. And the idea being that the way that an enterprise deals with risk using any parts of this organisation will have an environmental, an economic and a social impact, and it's achieving the balance. So the new challenge, the increased complexity, is getting the right balance between these outcomes when we're making risk-based decisions, bearing in mind that historically we've only had to worry about this one and we've gotten it completely wrong. So we've got a more complex system. We couldn't get it right historically, or we weren't great at getting it right, just considering economic outcomes. So how can we improve that? So some of the key, or from the literature review that I've done to date, sort of taking on this model, some of the key opportunities are really around reducing bias. So looking at the people and the processes, I guess the interventions that I'm looking at are around people and processes. So what can organisations do in these two areas? And the key opportunities is looking at some sort of intervention around bias. So doing anti-bias training, for example, for investment committees, as well as the analysts who pull the information together to reduce bias and improve knowledge on just basic statistics that are often used for risk decision making. Reducing noise or random error by looking at more integrated risk frameworks with criteria for materiality that is consistent across all of the disciplines. So rather than safety and social risks being dealt with independently of economic risks, independently of environmental, looking at frameworks that can match the intensity of different risks across the different paradigms to help trade-offs and decision-making between the groups. And lastly, there's some very interesting research by Tetlock, Mellors, and another fellow looking at these attributes of people they call super forecasters, who have very unique abilities to make decisions and forecast in very complex environments. So there's some very interesting research that's identified that there's certain cognitive skills as well as personality styles that tend to be conducive to really, really good decision-making in complex environments. So part of the research may be around cultivating the skills of super forecasters as well. The stage I'm at the moment is working with mining companies to elicit their interest and hopefully find willing participants so that we can look at testing, like scientifically testing some of these interventions to verify the improvement in innovation and risk-based decision-making for projects. So questions?
Excellent. Thank you, Laurie. So how are you able actually to deal with the misperception, as you mentioned, the noise, the bias, the complexity that's involved in project? What is exactly the tool that you're proposing for us to join these different dots together, or to create a better picture for decision makers?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, I haven't included it in my deck, but one of the key things is to have or to help organisations, first of all, recognise the importance of leadership, defining the risk tolerance and the risk appetite, and doing that by, like, it can be described using simple tools like a risk matrix, but the key, like looking at, or particularly the consequence criteria, looking across economic, social and environmental, and rating the severity of impacts in a consistent manner. So for example, if it was a 5x5 approach, for example, clearly articulating across the three dimensions, what does it mean to be catastrophic, for example, and having that equivalent intensity or equivalent levels of undesirability, if you like, and mapping that out across the board to come up with a more consistent approach to materiality. Because too often materiality is rated independently and inconsistently between the different disciplines. So largely around that risk tolerance framework that puts equivalence across the three: social, environmental and economic impacts.
Okay, excellent. Does anybody else have a question to Laurie, or cannot see hands? Yeah. Sarah, feel free.
Yeah, Laurie, just can you give us a quick snapshot as to what sort of characteristics super forecasters tend to have?
Yeah, yes, sure. So, so firstly, there's a book, Super Forecasters, that I definitely recommend that you check out. And he's also written a paper literally called Cultivating the Attributes of Super Forecasters. But in general, they're very good with numbers. So they're numerical reasoning tests, so they score very highly on that. Also in an area called fluid intelligence, which is like abstract reasoning. So I don't know if you've ever seen the psychometric tests that have the patterns, the abstract patterns, and then you have to select which pattern is the next one to fit the series. So they're very good at identifying patterns in the world and identifying the surrounding world and formulating patterns from them. In terms of so they're the sort of cognitive skills, and then the personality style is very interestingly open-mindedness. So these people tend to regard what they know as being just a theory, just a guess, and they're very much actively seeking new information and challenging themselves. So there's the sort of people who think very open-mindedly, are very welcoming of new information, are not set in their ways, and are continuously hungry for new information to improve their knowledge. So it's quite interesting. So the research that's been done, there's very strong. There's millions of questions that have been asked of these people. So there's a very strong data set. So there's certainly a very special type of resource that might be interesting as companies look to innovate and overcome sustainability challenges. Those same attributes have also been highly linked with creativity and innovation. So it's I think it's quite interesting.
Great, that's awesome. Thanks, Laurie.
So Laurie,
on you go, David.
Question.
Yeah.
Oh no, I haven't. I was thinking, oh crap, I'm on mute. Hey Laurie, I was just wondering. Obviously, you kind of had the stats about kind of overruns there. And there's a couple of things. There's one, certainly from the perspective of the organisation I work for, we are a software company, essentially. And not everything, but some of our stuff is kind of developed in using agile software development methodologies. I'm aware that agile has been taken and slapped on lots and lots of things where it shouldn't have been, but we do genuinely kind of do agile development. And are you aware of any kind of positive impact that kind of doing software development in that way has had on things like overruns? And then the second question was a kind of just a bit of maybe Russell might have something to say about this because it's a government thing, but and I understand the UK Treasury has a book that there's some way of estimating overruns and stuff that they build into projects. So I live close to a major road in this region called the A14, which was recently upgraded and came in ahead of schedule and under budget. At least I think it was under budget, but it's certainly ahead of schedule. Some of that may have been a bit of a bonus with the lack of traffic during COVID. But yeah, just on those two kind of things, you know, what you know, on the agile, has there been any impact, and kind of, but also these other tools that kind of exist for trying to estimate correctly how long a project is going to take and how much it's going to cost?
Yeah, so I'll answer your first one, and while I'm answering your first one, I'll try and pull up some other slides I have that answer your second question. But so on the agile ones, I'm not aware of any studies that demonstrate the difference in outcomes you get between waterfall and agile, for example. And it's a bit tricky because there's shades of grey. You'll have a project that'll have some construction elements that a waterfall approach will be used, and then some systems where agile. So it's not black and white, but certainly agile tends to be used on the more complex projects. So if you were to look at the statistics, I think it may appear that agile projects are overrunning more, but that's largely because the IT type projects are the type that need that iterative development in order to sort of validate and verify that they're meeting, you know, the desired requirements. So I don't have any specific research results on that, but certainly it's the IT projects, even in that previous slide, that are the ones that tend to be more complex by nature, more degrees of freedom, more human uncertainty, etc. So to your second question, so I have read about the Green Book briefly, and my understanding is that there's a correction factor that does get applied. So there is an attempt that's made to compensate for bias, is my understanding. There's some sort of are you able to see the slide that I've just shared?
Yeah.
Yep.
But I'm not a fan of it because, but I must admit I'm not completely familiar with it, so I may be misunderstanding it. But my understanding is that there's a correction factor, that when projects are of a certain size, there's a correction factor that gets added to the estimate to compensate for the fact that these sorts of projects normally are underestimated. And I'm not a fan of that, actually, because I think that's creating noise. You're just magnifying. If you're adding on a certain amount, if it was a bad estimate in the first place, you have, well, sorry, it may have been a good estimate or a bad estimate. You're just creating more noise by magnifying and adding a factor to it, whereas to address the root cause of the problem is possibly a better approach. So this is one example of a common errors that I've seen anecdotally from industry that I'll just let me. It's my laser. No, it's better. Yeah. So two of the common errors that are made that I look to address in industry, possibly this will be done through my research as well, is the making sure that the measures that are being used to describe a distribution for a project are correct. So this is the frequency or the probability here, the cost along here. Very often, certainly here in Australia and in other places around, the P50 is used as the measure of central tendency. And this is a systematic error because of the skewed distribution, the mean or average. So if you're executing a large number of projects, you're really setting the portfolio up for failure if you're budgeting on a P50, because on average, the law of average is that you're going to wind up somewhere around the mean, even if your models are good. So first of all, there's big statistical errors that are made systematically by delivery agencies that are delivering billions and billions of road and rail projects, for example. So that's one measure that we, as humans, P50 sounds like a good middle of the road sort of number. Often it's used, but it's the wrong measure of central tendency to use for projects, because projects have this skewed distribution. So that's one error that's made quite a lot. Another one, this is based on data from Australia, but the other one is not getting the variance enough. So we misshoot on the central tendency, but often we don't get the measure of spread right either. So this is the difference between the P50 and the P90 values for some of these mega projects. So this is 10 billion, 11 billion. That first project has now gone up to 16 billion, but at the time of this report, it was estimated at 9 billion. But the gap is only 7 to 8%. This is at the concept inception stage of projects. And, you know, if I was doing a very simple project at my home that I had detailed drawings for, the gap between the expected and worst case would maybe, you know, something like 10% at best. These are mega projects that haven't even been designed, that have geological risk, weather risk, pandemic risk, all the other sorts of risks. And the business cases consistently come through with outrageously optimistic variances that they expect between the worst case and the best case. So there's systematic underestimating of the spread, as well as inadvertent underestimation of the central tendency of these projects as well. So just two of those statistical measures are simple lenses that through my involvement with stage gates, for example, I'm able to very quickly take complex information, break it into two simple measures and say, oh, you know what, this doesn't look right, or maybe you should use the mean and redo your risk assessment, because the variation or the width of the spread doesn't quite look as wide as it should be.
Excellent. Laurie, can we continue this conversation on the chat? We will be joined by Sarah and Mark Boult. So feel free to share your contacts on the chat box. And if anyone wants to carry on with the conversation with Laurie, feel free to do it over, you know, emails and the common social media platforms. Sarah, the platform is always all yours, and then we have Mark Boult after that. Thank you very much, Laurie.
So Rodrigo, actually what I suggest we do is, firstly, Laurie, massive round of applause for your great presentation. Thank you so much. That was absolutely great. The IRM membership person, if you're listening, can you please make me host so that I've then got control of the meeting? Sorry, we're struggling a little bit because we don't have the power to do things our end. Sorry, we've been trying to message, but we understand you're probably super busy. If you can make me host, that would be amazing. And but firstly, what we're going to do is we're going to hop across to Mark Boult. Mark, many of you will know who Mark is. Mark, you've been, I mean, obviously you look very fresh-faced, but you have been a member of the special interest group for 1 or 2 years. Is that fair to say?
Probably almost 20.
How do you do it, sir? It must be all be in the moisturizer or something like that. But Mark, firstly, I'm going to pass across to yourself, because you've been leading, or certainly managing to corral a wide group of people to try and pull together some key aspects of risk management with regards to sustainability. So Mark, over to yourself to give us an update on what it is you've been up to.
Okay, and I'll do a fairly verbal one. I can pull up a document if you wish. And as I got pre-warning of approximately first thing this morning, followed by a whole load of meetings, it is not a beautiful presentation. I apologise. It was almost 2 years ago, I think. I'm a member of what's called RM1, which is the Risk Management Standards Committee for the UK. And we were given the task to look at, within the scope of risk management, what do people need to succeed sustainably? So it's very much sort of looking at sustainability from within the scope of risk management. And there was a consultation undertaken where we went out and we spoke to a lot of people. We ran about 4 or 5 roundtable discussions. And we also asked people to give us thoughts and ideas about what they thought basically was needed. And out of all of that, we scoped up a piece of work, and we're doing this through the British Standards Institute. It's not to produce a standard. One of the key findings we had was people did not want another standard. What people wanted was some sort of guidance to help them to see what is important to succeed sustainably and manage sustainability risks. And we weren't trying to do pure sustainability, we were trying to do the risk management sustainability area. Out of that came some things that people wanted. One was, it was recognised very clearly that there's loads of different terms, and exactly what people mean by them can vary, whether it's sustainability, ESG, CSR, PPP, etc., etc., etc. So there's a bit there where we were trying to say, right, well, we were going to define for at least what we're doing, what we mean by it. There's a recognition that within sustainability, the nature of some of the risks are more like emerging risks, perhaps, than they are about current day operational risks. Other ones will be more operational. And that if you're going to think about how you manage sustainability type risks, you perhaps need to start thinking about some of the things you would use within emerging as well as in normal operational risks. So we were basically have gone ahead with looking to try and pull together something that explains these different natures, and then what that means in terms of risk management, good principles, you could say, for risk management. There was a very clear message that actually, you could say, almost the first thing you do if you want to succeed, sustainably, one of the first, you could say, risk enablers, I could use the word rather than controls, is to actually make sure that your purpose, vision, value, or equivalency of that takes on board sustainability in the broadest sense. So there's a bit which we've written around that, and there's a lot which we felt, if you're going to do sustainability well, you need to get your context right in the normal risk management process. So there was people saying, can we have things to help us describe how we can basically look at context from the sustainability point of view. So there's a bit where we've gone to that and what you can think about there. And then there was how do you take a risk-based focus to managing sustainability risks? So just trying to get people to look at sustainability, understand what is material, what are the opportunities and the threats, so they focus. And that's linked fairly closely to something where people said, look, we have it's not easy to balance risks and sustainability. How do you do, you've got 2 options. One is great for the environment and useful, the usefulness of the social side. The other one actually is pretty neutral for those two, but is great for water usage and bad for perhaps use of raw materials or something. So you've got to think of these things and how you balance them. So there's a bit about how do you help people to get going and focus, and how do you get into making decisions, especially when you think of sustainability as covering such a broad area. You just have to look at the 17 UN Sustainable Development goals to realize how broad sustainability is. And it is essential that you think broadly, not just across all of those things, but also along the whole of your organization. If you're going to succeed sustainably, you need to think about the extended, the supply chain, the products, how they're used, services, how they're used. And then there was a bit all around, it started off as misreporting, but it's probably really become more about transparency, and because you wanted to see the upside, where people were clearly worried about greenwashing and the risks about it, and what can you do to try and make sure you are not perceived to be or proven to be greenwashing in terms of what you're saying about your sustainability performance. And it's perhaps not delivering sustainability, but if you have a reputation or you are perceived to have done something badly, whether you have or haven't, in terms of reporting on your sustainable performance, that will clearly hit your impact, your business, and means you may not succeed sustainably. Now, all we want to do is to, out of all that, we decided that, and we put forward that we would write something to try and talk through all of those sort of issues, which could then be put together in a format of anything from a document to a website to whatever that anybody wanted to do. But we would try and write that in a manner that is for the lay person, not for the risk analyst, but for the sort of, you could say, the general manager of an organization, whether it be small or large. So we are trying to keep to simple language, and we would try and do it so that it is as evergreen as possible, which means we would deciding we would have anything that is best practice or guidance for people to go and read in an annex, because that will clearly only last a year or two as best practice changes. So if I give a flavour for what we've done, I can probably do that. If I can share, can I do it? I've got some questions here first of all. That's thanks. Well done to the last. Well done. If I see if I can share a screen.
Hopefully you should be able to, Mark. If not,
okay.
IRM membership person, please make us hosts.
Can you see a,
which participants can share? Yeah, which participants can share?
Right, can you see a screen?
Yep, that's brilliant. Yep, we can see Mark.
Okay, fine. I'm not going to go through the document, it's too long, but what I'm going to do is just give you a flavour of what we've tried to do. Taking it, the first bit is all pretty generic. We've tried to discuss issues and then put a number of case studies in. So you'll find all the way through it, we've tried to put in case studies just to give an idea of explaining what was said in the text in reality. And we have in lots of places put in questions. And the questions are meant to be there so that if somebody is looking at what they can do, they can literally go through and sort of ask these questions in relation to whatever the bit is being discussed. So all the way through, we've put in questions that you can ask of yourselves, case studies, more questions, examples here from different companies. This is putting sustainability into your purpose. And again, a few pretty pictures, more questions. And so the idea is that what we've got is something where the layperson can pick it up and they can ask themselves, they can read what it says and they can ask questions of themselves. And when asking those questions, it should hopefully help them think about what they're doing to take actions to try and better manage, you could say, sustainability and sustainability risk. A lot of things, if you make a plan and you decide what you're going to do to improve sustainability, to be quite honest, you can then manage the plan using project risk work. You've just seen that. It doesn't matter what the project is. So this is about trying to get the sustainability into the scope and do so on. Now, where we are at is we have got a pretty good draft of everything except for the signposting section. We are just pulling that together to a stage to get it formally reviewed. We have got on the people writing it do include IRM members beyond myself. We've had some, so basically we're at a stage where if people want to review, we're very happy to put them into the review cycle. All you need to do is to contact me, or if you contact Sarah, she'll put you in touch with me if you've got her email. Then it will be at some stage taken, hopefully within a few weeks, to the BSI, who are looking at how to use it within the sort of whole initiative of the UK promoting sustainability. So how does it work, and how will it be then effectively published in some manner by BSI? Although we have suggested to BSI they should try and publish it with others if they are going to publish it as a document, and it should be more like a joint document than a one organisation document. And that's a sort of a quick overview. Sarah, you've read some of it. Do you want to add anything from your reviewing and critiquing and thoughts about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the use of the questions is really great, because it means that it makes it much more practical in a way to actually be able to use the document. And then also the case studies are great as well, because within sustainability and ESG, we don't yet have all of the regulations, for example, that you might have within finance. So actually, in a way, it's a little bit like using case law. So it's kind of say, well, what's everybody else up to? And so how do we make sure that we're ahead of the curve in terms of what everybody's peers are up to, rather than waiting for regulations to catch up? Because the regulations, as always, are about 5 years behind where we need them to be. But I think there's some really nice synergies between, or everything is in line between this guidance and then the three other bits of guidance that I'm about to share with you as well. So there's lots of information that's coming out, all of which complements one another. It doesn't it's not lots of duplication, it's all complementary, which is brilliant. Cool.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark.
So that's a pleasure. I don't know, there's a few chats I think that have come up, so I'm not sure, but I can stop sharing. I don't know if anybody wants to ask
Russell
anything.
was just asking Mark, he said, is it published?
No,
and we said, no, not yet.
it is at a point where it's almost at what I'll call a full draft stage for review by a select group of people.
Mark, may I ask you a question? Just in regard to the document, something that I have heard a lot over the past month is from risk managers, is this challenge that we usually face trying to balance sustainability and financial results, what I have framed as how to balance resilience and efficiency. Do you have any general recommendation in that area, what you have seen from your interaction with other risk managers and the working group working at the BSI?
Well, we did take the view that sustainability can also mean financial sustainability, although I'd have to be honest, the main focus has been beyond that, because that's normally the area people are managing anyway. What we have tried to do is to illustrate the importance to achieve, you could say, the financial sustainability of looking at sustainability more broadly in the long term, and to emphasize that to be sustainable, you need to be sustainable for the long term. So you need to take a long-term view if you wish to be successful. And if you are not going to be successful sustainably in the, you could say, the UN view of it, then you will not be, the world won't be successful and you won't be successful, in simple terms. You know, if we don't deal with the likes of climate change, water, etc., social and looking after societies, then in the end, you're unlikely to be successful as a business. So it's taken that sort of slightly more moral, you could argue, in it. But what we do have is looking at some thoughts about how do you include sustainability as in your equivalency of your, you could say, your financial calculations, understanding that there is a cost to doing things and there is a benefit to doing things, and you need to try and think about that within your model. But it's not easy.
No.
A lot of these things are soft money, not hard money, just like risk always is. And it's people will have different perceptions, but the importance of, you could say, setting out what you're going to do at the beginning and how you're going to measure it, and then doing it, and then you can go through a cycle and improve and come around, is absolutely valid.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense. So.
It does. It's a very challenging, balance to achieve. And you said it's a lot about perception and how is the time frame that you are evaluating your performance. So
yeah, and so I think quite a lot of it is saying, look, you're promising to do things, you've got to deliver to your promises. And the word promise is used quite often to say and you could argue that's slightly different from other people saying commitments or something. No, we're saying they're promises. You've said you'll do this, you'll do it. If you don't do it, then obviously that damages you. But if you don't do it and you're open and transparent and you explain why things went wrong, or maybe you had a go, open transparency, why it didn't work and how you're going to then address it, that's better than coming through and hiding or lying. And we try and emphasize the risks of, if you hide things and lie, you have the equivalent of the Volkswagen scenario or VW scenario, where they cheated the system, hid it, and then it all came out, and you could say they were hit to some degree at least. You've got Boohoo as well, I think. So those sort of things that we try to put as in examples so people understand. But we do also try and say, no, there's benefits. If you do it right and you can promote and share, and we've got some examples there again, what you've done, actually you can engage with your stakeholders and customers, and that will be beneficial to you, and it will be beneficial to them, and it's beneficial to the world.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark.
Russell, do you want to come in with your comment? There is an elephant in this room, and I think you've pointed your finger at it.
The value that I add to this group is begging for resources for this toolkit, right? I think it's really great, and I'd echo kind of Sarah's comments in the sense of actually case studies and questions really brings these things to life, and it's certainly a challenge that we find kind of sharing insights and knowledge from kind of the fourth line of defence. The UK National Audit Office is actually, we can share good practice, but actually people want to know how to bring it to life and to understand consequences of these questions, or certainly to understand benefits. So the fact that it covers both threats and opportunities, I think, is fantastic. My question really was a plea for, in terms of building this toolkit and value add to the members of the SIG, whether or not this could be part of our toolkit, because I think it'd be a really great addition.
We've tried to say it should be a free open resource, and it's been produced by people for free, so hopefully it will be a free open resource, unlike an ISO standard you pay for. But at the end of the day, it will be a BSI decision, but it's gone ahead on the basis that it ought to be a free open resource. And as I said, it ought to be not branded just by the BSI in our minds. We were saying actually the BSI should be trying to do this with others, including the likes of the IRM. And as an IRM member, I can believe that fully. But of course, I'm not necessarily in control of that bit.
So I think, Mark,
I have all the documents and words, so I can just do that.
So Mark, let's take that offline and see what we can maybe make happen there, because I think that there's certainly an opportunity on the table, isn't there, with regards to all of this, which is great.
This should be a general document many can use, and if people want to be part of the review, as I've said, just email me. I'll put an email in the chat. That would be a useful thing to do.
Yeah.
And then I'll just share it with you, and you're expected to comment though. That's your commitment.
Awesome. Thank you very, very much, Mark. Does anybody else have any questions for the fabulous Smart Bolts? Yeah. On you go, David.
Quick question, Mark. Is it aimed at people who are not already doing sustainability reporting?
There's sustainability reporting, and then there's the scope we were given, which was to help people succeed sustainably. And that I could argue is slightly different. So reporting is only part of it all. So we have the specific section on reporting, which is really, you could say, a mix of reporting, accountability and transparency, but it's saying what do you need to do to report well. But the rest of it is actually, what should you be doing? So first of all, you've got to decide, you've got to look at your business and say, what is it, where can I have the best impact? What is the best thing for, best way I can do? Where are the biggest issues from a sustainability point of view? And that, when I say impact, that means it could be you're saying, actually, I can help create a solution for society to make sustainability better for my customers. But it could also be, no, I need to change the way I'd run my business to do something in a different manner, to, I don't know, go more into the circular economy and not be using any raw materials, because if there's no more materials, Sarah's job's almost on the line, isn't it? But conceptually saying, how do you make things better? So it could be there's internal things you need to change. It could be external. It could be managing risks, and it could be actually helping others, creating opportunities for you to help others. You could sell things which are better. So it's taking that view. And it's not, and that goes beyond reporting, but it does recognize that there are pressures on the reporting side, especially the ESG side. So things like, if you can demonstrate that you are good sustainably, then it's good with many stakeholders, including potentially the financial community, and including in there that you may need to report according to a certain standard. But those are only coming in, and all we're doing is emphasizing there's going to be more and more of that. And there is some convergence at the moment on reporting requirements, but there is not uniformity on reporting requirements, and they don't cover the full scope. Some things are only climate change. Some things do try and take a slightly broader view. They aren't covering everything. So some of it is your own reporting.
We can dive into that in more detail next time, David, in terms of what's going on there. Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much, Mark. That is brilliant. Cool. Round of applause to Mark, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Cool, excellent. Unless anybody else wants to share anything on today's session, I've got 3 or 4 things in terms of different documents that have either already been launched or in the process of being written. So really good resources that are out there at the moment. The first one is, if you look into the chat, I've put just a link to the IRM events page. So let me just share my screen so you can see what I'm looking at. Some of you may have noticed that the IRM, they've set up their annual conference, as it were, and this year they're doing it in partnership with Strategic Risk. So if I just click on that link, and so this year it is a climate change and ESG forum. So this is a day where people are getting together, and you can see that you can go and buy tickets, etc. there. In terms of the agenda, it is changing. Every time you look at this page, it does slide around a little bit, but you will see that so it starts at 9 a.m. And basically it's a whole mixture of really good panel debates, keynote addresses, interviews, etc. A lot of the different special interest groups, for example, are doing things within this, and you can see as well, so who are these people? You can see some of the biographies, etc. that are coming through there. Fabulous. There you go, Mark, just giving you platforms, like excellent. Okay, so and Mark, I'm not going to comment on when that picture was taken. I think my one was probably around about the same time. I certainly don't look as fresh-faced as that one anymore.
An IRM event.
So for this, if anybody is interested, unfortunately, this is a paid-for event. Unlike, for example, these special interest groups, which are free to come along to if you're a member, etc. But those of you who are interested in coming along, we will see you there. Also, if there are key aspects within this that you'd like to know more about, let us know, and we'll be able to bring them to you. Those of you who subscribe to Strategic Risk will also know that they've done a variety of different surveys recently on what different practitioners think about sustainability in ESG risk management. And so they will be releasing some of the data that they've been collecting, I think, during this event, if not before as well. So that's number one in terms of things that are going on in the risk world with regards to sustainability, which is great. The second thing to note, and this is the really long link that I put into chat, you can tell that I didn't realize how long this particular URL was before I pasted it. So I'm assuming that a number of you here have done the IRM certificate, if not the diploma, at some point in time. So give us a wave. Excellent. There are a number of you who have done this. So the certificate has been updated, and quite severely so, actually. And what you can see here is, as of a couple of weeks ago, the new syllabus was launched. So what you can do is you can click download syllabus, and here it is. There are a number of errors in here, which I spotted just now, having downloaded it. But if you scroll down to page number 9, here we go. This is the new structure of the IRM certificate. So you can see it is still in module 1 and module 2. So you've got the principles of risk management, so all the theory stuff, and then the practice of risk management being in module 2. But then when you look at the structure of the units, you'll see it's very different to how it used to be. And the reason why I bring this to your attention now is that unit 8 is actually called sustainability. It is not called organizational sustainability. That is an error. It is called sustainability. So if you go in there, you will see that there is a whole package of information that is explicitly focused on sustainability and ESG related risk management. It does refer actually to the impending BSI document. So it's a case of saying, you know, this is being drafted at the moment, which is great. And also, Rodrigo, you'll be delighted to see that actually, so the resilience chapter or unit comes immediately after the sustainability unit. And what the authors have intentionally done is to say, okay, well, how do they complement one another? So very much in line with what Mark just said.
I just launched a module on organizational resilience and sustainability at Roehampton. So if anyone is interested, feel free.
Awesome, great. So what you can see here is, and obviously within the syllabus, there is more detail, for example, and what we can do is if we, there we go, that's unit 7. So here we go, unit 8. So this, okay, so the title is correct here. So it just says sustainability. And so what you can see in here is a bit more detail in terms of, and again, that shouldn't say organizational sustainability. You can see some of the background with regards to what's actually in here. Now, some of the content within here are very carefully structured because it is going through off-call at the moment. But there's some really interesting content that sits within it that, as I previously mentioned, is in line with what Mark and co have been putting together, which is great. The third thing to mention is that many of you will have come across this book at some point in time in your travels. So this is the Risk Management Handbook that's edited by David Hilson. It has just been updated. So the first updated version of all of the chapters has just gone to the publisher for their final check with regards to it, and then it will be published. I just stopped sharing my screen so I can find the notes on this. So this is something here where, compared to the old version, so whilst of course, yes, it's a fantastic book and go and put it in everybody's stockings, don't buy this version. Wait a few months for the new version to come out. I even have a picture of the new front cover because that's so useful for all of us. There it is. Ta-da! Okay, second edition of the Risk Management Handbook. Let's stop sharing that now. So basically what we've got in the new version are 4 new chapters. There's a chapter on ESG risk management, which is written by myself. There's a chapter on climate change risk management that's written by Martin Massey. So he is the chair of the Climate Change Special Interest Group for the IRM. There's a chapter on financial risk management that's written by Clive Thompson, who many of you will also know from the IRM. And then also there is a new chapter on legal risk management from Sam De Silva, who happens to be chair of the Legal Risk Special Interest Group for the IRM. So you could say that that either David has done the right thing by go to all the special interest group chairs, or he's just been really lazy and gone through the IRM website. I'm sure David hasn't been really lazy in the slightest. He is the least lazy man you're going to come across. So this is something where we've got 8 new authors who have joined the team of 25 authors from 8 countries on 4 continents. So it's a very international group of people who have been writing this. So the first draft manuscript went to the publisher yesterday afternoon, and the final draft is due before Christmas, with the publication scheduled for sometime next year. Also with that, David has suggested that if you want to know more about his thoughts on managing risk for sustainable businesses, a practical approach, he did actually put together a little YouTube video. He's really good at YouTube videos, which I shall just pop into chat now. So you can see within this, there's lots of really excellent material that's being pulled together at the moment. Just to give you a very quick sneak peek at some of the figures in the sustainability risk management chapter, which I'm sure David won't mind me revealing because it was been my pen all over it. I'm going to show you it in PowerPoint version. So here we've got a version of, well, what do we actually mean by the E, the S and the G? So the E being all about nature, the S being all about people, and the G being all about culture, with various different things coming together. And if you roll them all together, that's what you get as being sustainability. There are lots of different versions of this diagram that are out there. Also, the chapter looks at double materiality or dynamic double materiality, if we want to use all of the jargon and smash it together. So that just refers to the fact that, yeah, we all talk about material risks, material issues, material factors. It's always about what is the most important thing to different people. If you are traditionally speaking an accountant, you get asked what are the material risks, you will generally be looking at those risks that might cause you to lose lots of money. However, if you go and speak to a social expert, material aspects mean something very, very different. And so sustainability brings all of that together. And the most important thing there is that we're considering material aspects that are things that we as an organization could do that might impact on the world round about us, and vice versa. So you're looking at that double flow, and then the dynamic aspect of that just means everything is constantly changing. Does it sound like risk management? It certainly is. Another little diagram here is just around different time horizons. So this attempts to roll in the concept of emerging risks into sustainability, because actually an awful lot of sustainability type risks, depending on what kind of organization you're in, fit into that emerging risk category, just purely because the time horizons are really long. But I'm sure Laurie will agree with me, in the world of, say, mining, we don't tend to use emerging risks in the same way that, say, a bank does, because if we only looked at risks over a time horizon of 3 to 5 years, we'd miss most of them, because a lot of what we're actually doing is over decades, if not more than that, in terms of those time horizons. So explicitly looking at time horizons, and then the final one, or just 2 final ones. So typical ESG themes and drivers. So this is then making the point that you've got some different themes or drivers that span the E, the S and the G. In fact, you never really get anything in isolation. So this is in line with what both Mark and Laurie were saying earlier on. Everything is integrated, everything's a network, everything is complex. And organizations that are still trying to manage their ESG just by looking at environment, just by looking at social, just by looking at governance, are missing big opportunities, to put it in a polite way. So you've got this going across the entire piece. And then finally, just to try and roll the chapter together, is saying, okay, if this is our risk management process, so you can, use ISO 31000 or use a 4-step process or COSO, it really doesn't matter. Where does ESG nicely slot in to your existing enterprise risk management that you have within your organization? So how does that roll together? And things like the materiality assessment. A materiality assessment, and this is as far as I'm aware, and I stand to be corrected on this, a materiality assessment is just part of a good risk assessment. But then I'm a risk manager, so I'm totally biased when it comes to this. And of course, when I say risk, I mean both threat and opportunity. I'm not just talking about the bad stuff. But with all of this, if anybody is interested in any of those diagrams, etc., I mean, they are all, yes, you can buy them in the book, but they're all freely available, and they get used on a very regular basis in different IRM training courses, etc. as well. So 3 big things that are coming to your way soon. So you've got the IRM Conference, you've got the update with regards to the certificate, very much including sustainability as a core component within that. And then you've also also got, alongside Mark's guidance that he's been putting together, David Hilston has updated his book so that you've got lots of those different typical aspects of ESG, sustainability, climate change, etc. All of that stuff coming together. So having gone from something that was maybe a little bit fringe until a couple of years ago, or certainly when people were talking about, well, what does climate change mean to us? They only thought it was about hurricanes that might impact on our ability to get our computer chips. The world within risk management has moved forwards tremendously over the last 2.5 years, which is great. And we're really seeing that coming forwards in the literature at the moment, which I think is really exciting. Cool. Any questions on any of the stuff that I just threw at you? Are you excited? Okay, 1 or 2 people are like, yay, fabulous. Okay, cool. So I think with regards to that, and I'm acutely aware that Rodrigo has to go and teach a course in 6 minutes time. What I will say is that from a special interest group perspective, obviously we've been quite quiet over the last few months. The IRM's gone through some changes in terms of who looks after the special interest groups, but I think that's now settled, which is really great. Russell, in line with what you were saying earlier on, our next step is now to go, right, how do we actually build this little toolkit that we've got for ourselves? As you can see, we've got bucket loads of material. It's just a case of how do we actually put it all together? My initial suggestion would be we could just create the same way that we did last year for the digital innovation stuff that we did. Not necessarily run a conference, but actually have a little website where we can put all of these different tools and techniques into that little website and link it into the IRM website. I don't know if people think that that might be a useful idea. It means that we can update it really quickly, and also kind of say, look, here's a whole load of references, for example, that we all like to use. Russell, what do you reckon? I'm going to pick on you.
Yeah, I think that's great. To me, it's the accessibility point, isn't it? Let's get this information out to as many members as possible. Let's signpost as many people as possible. It'd be great. I hope we're not taking conference off the table, but I certainly found with the digital session last year that was a really great way to bring some of this stuff to life and embed some of what we've been doing across the SIG. So I think using digital platform is really smart. Yeah. Cool.
Okay. I hear what you're saying. In terms of not wanting to take the conference off the table, I always love a bit of a conference, as everybody knows, but I have to be reined in with regards to them on a regular basis. But cool. Thanks very much, Russell. Does anybody else have any thoughts in terms of how we might want to pull this together, make it real? If not, we will be sharing ideas in the coming weeks because we've got a huge array of fabulous information that has been shared with us. So, Rodrigo, any final words of wisdom or notes for everybody? And then I'll go to Catalin.
No, not from me. Excellent section. Thank you.
Cool. Catalin, how about yourself?
Whoops. No, not from me. It's been a great meeting.
Awesome, brilliant. So as always, thank you very, very much. So Laurie and Mark, thank you very, very much for sharing your stories with us this week. Round of applause for yourselves. There we go. You can take your bow. And brilliant. And we will be back with everybody very soon, during which we will most likely be diving into, okay, cool. So how do we get all this stuff up online so that everybody can access it and begin to use it, which is great. So with that, Rodrigo, we've got 3 minutes so that you can